What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Alex Cuesta Show. How is everybody doing on this September 28th? It is a Wednesday, our normal recording day in the year of 2022. Dave, why did I say the date that way?
I don't know. No idea.
I don't know either. So, hi, Dave. There he is.
Hi.
He's Dave Cuesta. That's my brother. How are you, Dave? How's everything going?
I'm pretty good, but it is late, so I want to get this show done.
It's very late.
Because I do wake up early as well, so I completely understand.
My schedule's varied, so I wake up early sometimes and I don't. And you just heard the voice of our guest. Let's just go ahead and jump him right in there. Our guest, the legend, Larry Melnick. He's a fantasy
Wait a second. You sent me a note asking what you should call me.
Yeah, you said the legend.
Yes, but my name is Lenny.
Lenny, yeah, the legend, Lenny Melnick, right?
No, you said Larry.
Oh, I said Larry. Oh, my God.
I could be Larry, though.
This is getting off to a great start.
I'll tell you what. I could be Larry, I could be Mo, and I could be Curly. I could be any one of them.
So for anyone that's astute out there that's a fantasy sports fan, Lenny is a pioneer in fantasy sports radio. He has the Lady and the Legend podcast that's going on all the time, every week. And he's just someone that has a wealth of knowledge, and David and I are pumped to have him on for the show. Before we get going into anything fun, like, share, follow, subscribe, rate 5 stars on Spotify and iTunes. Spread this word of mouth. Find us on social media at the Alex Cuesta Show. So let's get going right away. Lenny, not Larry. How are you, Lenny? How's everything going?
I'm very tired, so let's hurry up and get this over with.
I'm
doing good. I love doing the shows. That's what I've been brought up on, not necessarily on podcasts, because the podcast is taken over now.
Yep.
It used to be, you listen to the radio, you spend money for Sirius Radio. I got Sirius Radio. Well, let me tell you something. The podcasts are overwhelming all the radio that's on the air, all the sports radio. A lot of great podcasts. There's a lot of what I don't like about the podcasts is that many of them, they just go to the surface and they don't go beneath the surface. And why? The reason is because people don't realize how much time it takes to prepare for a show. Anybody can do a 1-hour show, but to do a 1-hour show, you got to prepare for 2 hours. Okay. And I try to tell people how to prepare, what you should be doing, so that you don't come up with the same stuff that everybody else does. And the reason that people can't do it is that they don't have the time. And you can't blame anybody for that. The guidance that I give, if you're going to do a radio show or a podcast, you got to be a little different. There's thousands of good ones. And I say, read all the out-of-town newspapers every morning and take notes. Wow. Now, I do that, and I've been doing that since Roto News. Now it's called Roto Wire, of course, with Jeff Erickson. When they first came out, they have a section that's still on there called Local Papers, where it takes you right into the sports section of every paper that covers a baseball team. And I sit there and I take my notes, and by the end of the day, guys, and I'm saying this because it's the truth, I'm not bragging. By 9 o'clock in the morning, I know more about overall Major League Baseball than anybody in the country, including Peter Gammons and whoever else you want to throw in there, because I read about every team. Now, by 11 o'clock, they may catch up to me. But, I do it early in the morning, and I am very familiar with all the beat writers, and I've got to meet some of them. I don't talk to them every day, but it's about preparation, and there's some good podcasts where people do the prep, and instead of saying when they're asked, "What do you think of this guy?" Well, I like him. I think he's going to be good. Yeah, Bull Dinky and Poppycock. Why do you like him? Nobody says why. All right. So that's what you got to do. You got to be a little different than anybody else, but there's a lot of good stuff out there.
And that's one of the reasons I really wanted to have you on, Lenny. We talked a few weeks ago now on the phone, and you are just a wealth of knowledge. You have experience that, we can all learn from. David and I can certainly learn from. We do our best here to try and make ourselves as unique as possible. Dave and I go back and forth with topics we want to do all the time. And a lot of times, it's David going, no, everyone's already doing that. Why are we going to talk about that? Like, I don't need to hear it. I heard it 1,000 times on each podcast today. Okay,
so good job, David.
We do our best there. But I think one of the things that you talked about is the work ethic that you have. Right now, you're in you described yourself earlier as a semi-retired state to David and I.
Yeah.
And even in your semi-retired state, you are willing to put in hours of work early in the morning, unpaid work, just to be prepared to do what you do. And I think a lot of that comes from your upbringing. Now, you grew up in 1950s Queens, and it was a different time, a different era where hard work, I think, was certainly valued a lot more than it is today. Talk to me a little bit about your upbringing, maybe what got you into this hard work ethic, and then a little bit about the baseball scene, because baseball was a little different in the city of New York during your upbringing.
Oh, it was. And first of all, look, you got to, I never say I work. If it was work, I wouldn't do it. Okay. I do it as a labor of love. I never charged for my podcast. I've been doing it for 15 years. I never charged for my website. I take trips around the country. Andy and I get in the car. We take 3 months. We drive around the country. We meet hundreds of our supporters, and they pay the bills most of the time, but still, it's not work. I grew up in Queens, New York, and I'll tell you, it had to be the best time and the best place ever to grow up as a kid. We had the Yankees, we had the Giants, and we had the Brooklyn Dodgers. You forgot to put the Dodgers in your...
Dodgers were there, yes.
It was, you kidding me? And, you made your friends based upon what team they rooted for. It wasn't about this guy's a good guy. Forget about that. He's a Dodger fan. You're my friend. You're a Yankee fan. I can't stand you, okay? Because there were only 3 things that we cared about growing up. 3 things. We cared about our favorite Major League Baseball team. We cared about our Little League team. When I get the call from whatever manager drafted me in the tryouts, and of course the next day in school, the whole school day is finding out who was on your team, who has a good team, who's got and then you come on, it was just a time. And of course, the only other thing we cared about was our baseball cards. So it was the baseball cards, the Little League team, and our favorite Major League team. Nothing else mattered. I graduated high school with a 77 average, and my friends thought I was a genius. Okay.
So important question before you go on.
Yes.
Where did you fall? Giants, Yankees, or Dodgers? This is important to the rest of the conversation.
Oh, absolutely. The Dodgers. Edwin Donald Snyder was my favorite player. He was the Duke of Flatbush, and it was great to go to Ebbets Field. I did go a number of times with my dad, and to see the Dodgers, for the most part, they were the hometown favorites. The Yankees, of course, were the winning teams. The Giants were kind of very few Giant fans that I remember, but it was the Brooklyn Dodgers that captivated me, and I remember writing I think the first thing I ever wrote in length as a 7-year-old or 8-year-old, Bat Boy for a Day. And I spent more time writing why I should be Bat Boy for a day than anything I ever did in school in my life, including my college finals. All right. Of course, I didn't win. I remember I was applying to be the Dodger Bat Boy for a day. And at the end, I said, and my father's a Giant fan, which he was. But I wrote in there, I said, I know every bat that they use. I know the pitchers are like this. I didn't know nothing, but I was so involved that I'll never forget. That was the greatest thing I've ever written until today. Go ahead.
So we have, we fast forward here. You're growing up a Dodgers fan, Giants.
Oh yeah.
Dodgers leave, Giants leave. Mets come in 62. They absolutely steal the logo of the Giants. But what is it like? What's the city like at that point where both those teams are gone? A lot of fandoms, a lot of fandoms traveled with those teams. I know a lot of fans of the Dodgers stayed fans of the Dodgers even when they went to LA. My wife's grandfather was a Dodgers fan till the day he died. And it's just a thing that they stayed with. But what was the city's reaction when the Mets came in and tried to fill the void of two teams that left?
Devastating. And here's the reason. New York, in spite of the Yankees, New York is a National League town with two National League teams, right? Yeah, I'm still here, right? Yep. And when they both left, New York didn't have a National League. Yep. No National League. Yep. Now, when the Giants moved out to San Francisco, there's a broadcaster who you may or may not have heard of. His name was Les Kiter. Les Kiter, yep. My favorite announcer of all time. Les Kiter did the Floyd Patterson, Ingemar Johansson fights when Patterson was knocked down. The greatest sporting event ever broadcast. But Les Kiter rebroadcast the Giant games from San Francisco, and he wasn't at the game. He was sitting in an office listening to it on the radio, and he was going, "There's a base hit to right field," right?
That's amazing.
That's awesome. What he did.
That's so cool.
And Les Kiter, Mays rounding third, heading for home. It's Mays the ball, Mays the ball, Mays the ball. He beat the ball, he beat the ball. Les Kiter just was incredible in not just that sport, but he broadcast the game. And the people in New York, forget about it. They listened to those games more than any games you would listen to now. And then, of course, the Mets come to town. Mm-hmm. And everything was good until the draft, when they were drafting with the Angels of L.A. And the Mets took, as their first pick in the draft, a mediocre catcher named Hobie Landreth. And when Casey Stengel was asked, why would you take Hobie Landreth as your number one pick? Casey Stengel said, we need somebody to catch the ball after the pitcher throws it. and that typified the Mets from day one.
To this day.
To this day. That was the Mets. And the Mets, of course, had some good teams, but they had a lot of great personalities. But it was National League. National League. Imagine being a National League fan in the 50s with Aaron and Ernie Banks and Willie May, and then they're gone. And you don't see them anymore. Clemente and all these guys. Yeah. So when they came back to New York, look, it didn't matter if the Mets won or lost. They were still a tremendously popular team, and to this day, the Met fans are Met fans. We're all very special.
So I have to ask you, you talked about radio announcers. We have one in New York that, I've listened to since I was young. I feel like he's almost on his way out. John Sterling. What is your opinion on John? Because he's a kind of a throwback in a generation that, if you're new radio listeners, a lot of announcers don't announce like John does anymore. And he's does it in a throwback fashion where he's much more animated. What are your opinions on John?
Well, let's put it this way. I would think I listen to John Sterling all the time. He had a talk show in New York. He had a talk show, and I think it was WMCA radio, and he was a nasty guy. He was nasty. He was not a nice talk show. He was one of those guys who would tell you to get off the air. And I, of course, as Lenny from Long Island, I still call talk shows, okay? Lenny from Long Island, that's me, okay? And I called John Sterling a lot, and he used to say, give it a rest. And he'd hang up on me. Now, about 5 years ago, I got John Sterling to be a guest on my show.
That's awesome.
That's really cool.
And he comes on my show, and he doesn't wake up on time. So my producer had to call him, and he acknowledged he was unbelievably upset that he overslept. He came on telling us all, I overslept. I probably sound like it, but I wouldn't miss this one. He was very nice. And we did a nice little interview and the whole thing. And then at the end, and I'm feeling, are you kidding me? I'm Lenny Melnick. I made it. I got John Sterling as my guest.
Oh,
John Sterling and I are friends. John Sterling, John, would you do me one favor before we go? Would you do a home run call for me? Okay, with my name in it. Okay.
Oh, I love that.
I love it. Let's hear
Are
it.
you kidding me? Let's hear it. You know what he said to me? What's your name again? I'm flying. And John Sterling comes back to, what's your name again? You didn't even know who it was. He gave the home run call. I was so upset when he said, what's your name again? Here I'm thinking we're the best friends in town. And the whole thing. But, John is, look, you can't be like everybody. I have a hard time now listening to a lot of the broadcasts because the home run calls on the radio and TV are just too much. It's too much. I mean, it's too much. Especially there was an announcer for the Yankees. Talk about too much. How about who was too little? Red Barber. I don't know if you remember Red Barber.
No, I don't remember Red.
Red Barber. He was the. This is Red Barber here, the old redhead. Okay, and here's the windup now, and here's the pitch on the way. Now I'm listening to him on the radio. My father was driving. I'm sitting in the back seat with my head between the seats, listening to the radio. And this is the Red Barber home run call. Well, friends, there's a fly ball to right field. Need I say more?
Yeah, please say more.
Say more.
Tell us what's going on.
I didn't know what happened.
That's your job.
But you do know that need I say more means a home run. Okay, but still, you got to say more, all right? And he would say, here's the score at the end of 5 innings. It's the White Sox won. It's a Rocky Colavito won and Mickey Mantle won. He was, look, the announcers, including Harry Carey, the great Harry Carey. I once heard, I went to school out in Indiana, and I used to listen to Harry Carey announce the St. Louis Cardinal games, okay, before he became the Cubs. And I think the greatest matchup was Harry Carey announcing Julian Javier stepping into the plate. But Harry Carey once said, there's a fly ball to deep center field. Foul and out of play, right? So the announcers are just who could be the loudest, who could be the wildest. But the announcers back in the day, everybody had their shtick. Everybody had their stuff. So it'll never be the same. Never be the same. But now, especially when you're on TV, it's even too much. TV is supposed to let the picture take care of the announcing. But still, I don't even watch that many games anymore. There's a little secret that I don't really tell a lot of people. I don't watch a lot of games. I don't listen to a lot of games. But with all the homework that I do every day, by 9 o'clock every morning, after reading every out-of-town newspaper about every game, as I said, I know more about Major League Baseball than anybody, probably until about 11. Okay, but
that's
still, fantastic. And really, I feel like I've watched every game. And of course, Andrea, my wife, sits here and she watches what's the name of the show? MLB what? MLB quick pitch. She watches all those things. So I don't watch any games, but I see all the highlights, and we have a ball. That's great. Nothing like it.
That's great. So you mentioned listening to it on the radio. Now, obviously, in New York here, we have WFAN, and there's 24/7 sports talk radio all around the country now.
Yeah.
I can only listen to WFAN in small doses. I listened to it a lot more for a while. I listened to ESPN radio for a little, and then I got tired of that quick. But WFAN, I can only listen to it in small doses.
Yeah, right.
And it's not, I feel like, I don't know. I have a mixed emotion about sports talk radio. You were around, when, obviously you probably listened to it when Susan put the first words out there on WFAN. Waldman. Yeah, Susan Waldman, first ever voice of WFAN.
I'm listening in my car. I'm sorry. I'm just excited about that.
No, yeah, go ahead.
So when Susan Waldman introduced, it was 66 radio. It was it went from WNEW, that was a country western station. She switched it over. Susan Waldman started it. The shows were terrific. Now, to me, well,
Has it helped or hurt the fandom? Because I feel like
I think
the way the
it's hurt.
fans, I don't like them. I don't like them on there.
And right now, especially today, too much gambling.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Everything is gambling. Now, I know I'm supported by FanDuel and I'm supported by DraftKings and many times, but it's gone too far, especially in today's world. We're here on the East Coast. How many people can afford to lose $500 in a year now?
I can't.
And all they're doing is talking about the gambling. And if you're ahead by 7 points, you win. What does that tell you? You're a sucker. Right? So, yeah, I've listened to, and like I say, I've listened to not just New York radio, but I would fine tune the dial, and I would listen to so many radio shows outside of New York. I forget the guy's name. He came to New York for a while. He was a shock jock radio guy, talk show. Oh, gee whiz, who very famous guy. But anyway, he came to New York and he was no big deal because we already had the shock jock kind of guy who would say, hang up and get out of here and whatever. No, I don't. Like I said, the podcast world has taken over. Most of us, because of the nature of fantasy sports, because the nature of Major League Sports, where it's a lot about gambling, most of us listen to podcasts that are directed towards what we like to gamble with.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's how it's transpired. I'm not a big fan of that, but then again, look, I could do I once did a podcast on pinball. All right. Yeah, because I announced pinball on podcast, but because I love it, I just love doing it. I love it. I love listening to it. I love doing it. Up with the right flipper. Here we go. Up with the right hand. The ball hits the clown. Fantastic. He bounces off the clown. Now he goes into the hole, pops off, hits the 200-mile.
That's great. That's fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you.
So you mentioned fantasy sports. You jumped that in there. That's a perfect segue. So for people that aren't familiar, you are an absolute pioneer in fantasy sports. In this country. You did the first ever fantasy sports radio show in 1993. Now, at that time, me and you talked about this. Fantasy was not what it is now. It wasn't all this head-to-head stuff, the way it's drafted now. It was a lot of draft your guys, whatever score they get. It's all on one big league, one pool league, and you just kind of whatever score you had would move you up and down the chart, the list.
Right.
What made you start this radio show, do a radio show on fantasy sports in 1993 when it certainly was not anywhere like it is now? What did you see in fantasy sports that made you think, aha, this might catch on?
Well, first of all, in 1993, we did the show. I'll tell you why we did it. But I'll tell you what we didn't realize at the time until years later, we didn't realize we were the first ever show dedicated to fantasy sports.
That's awesome.
Now think about it. I'm supposed to say my greatest achievement is my 3 kids, but they're not here right now, okay? So to do the first ever fantasy sports radio show, that's really incredible. And now I topped it because I do a fantasy sports radio show with my wife, Andrea. Now, how many guys can do that? Okay. Yeah. And we're a little different than any other show in the country because how many shows have you watched where you can imagine the hosts with their middle finger up in the air to each other? Okay. But
well, that's called being married. So we can actually believe it.
And we actually get people who are not sports fans, but they say we married, so we get it. But so my part, I used to go to I had a fellow who did my income taxes every year. And every year, once a year, I go to his office, he'd do my taxes. And then he read something in either the Wall Street Journal, I think it was the Wall Street Journal. He said, I know you're a big baseball fan. Lenny, I'm reading about this rotisserie baseball. What do you think? You want to join a league with me? I was asked to join. And I said, sure. Well, I would see my partner his name was Irwin. I would see him once a year, and every year we'd say, "Oh, we got to get together. We got to get." And sure enough, the following year we got together. All right, but now we're partners on this rotisserie team. I'm going to tell you guys, and this is not an exaggeration. We spoke every single day, every day. Now, his office was in Manhattan. My office was further out on Long Island. I never got the late scores in those days.
Oh, no.
He did because his office was in Manhattan. So in order for me to get the scores and find out what was going on, he called me every morning at 8:30, and we did a radio show on the telephone. And he'd go through the box scores, but what we talked about was not just 2 for 4, RBI and a double.
Yeah.
Jody McDonald, who you may know.
Jody Mack, yep.
Jody Mack, he belongs in the Fantasy Baseball Hall of Fame because he had a segment on WFAN radio, aired at 12 midnight. I used to set my alarm clock to hear Jody Mack because I didn't get the late scores.
So this is early for you, so I don't want to hear it. You used to set it for 12 midnight?
Yeah.
You're early. This is early for you now.
Well, yeah, but I didn't have to set my alarm. I stayed up all by myself, all right, till 7, whatever. The point is, so Jody Mack would come on, and he would do Tony Gwynn, 2 for 4, RBI, and a double, all right? And he would go through all the late games. Now, Irwin and I, every morning, we'd go through the late games, but a little different. Who moved down in the batting order, who sat because a lefty was pitching, who made an error, who couldn't afford to make an error because he wasn't hitting, all kinds of fantasy stuff in there. And one day, we always said, this is a radio show. So I went to WGBB radio on Long Island. I walked in. I saw an ad in the paper. It said, do your own radio show. I walked in, and as long as I was willing to pay for the hour, they put me on, and I did. All right, and that's how that first show started. Irwin's Willing, Sandy Stoll, Lenny Melnick, and we did. I believe we did a 2 or 3 hour show. I still have it. I have that show, and I will tell you, it was the first time I ever had a microphone in front of me. It's so bad that it's actually fun to listen to. It really is. And the fun part about it, of course, was the names from the years that we did the show in the late 90s. Listening to the names, oh, yeah, I remember that guy. It's a lot of fun. So that's how the first ever rotisserie, later turned fantasy show started. And it was pretty tough to start because Major League Baseball threw a lawsuit at us.
Really?
At the beginning.
That's incredible.
They did not want the stats being used to make money other than themselves. So
That's not surprising.
They would not let fantasy baseball use the stats.
Wow.
Greg Ambrosius led the team into court, and we won the case, and
Nice.
It was never the same after that.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Now you went on eventually. You were on Sirius Radio, if I'm not mistaken, Mad Dog Radio. You had a show, correct?
Oh yeah, I've been on there for 13 years, and when Sirius first came around, Steve Cohen, who runs the station out there, he had heard me on WGBB. And as a matter of fact, I don't know if you know Ann Liguri. She does the tennis and golf.
Okay.
She listened to our show on WGBB when she was driving from Manhattan out to Long Island. And she called us. I used to do the overnights with Ann Liguri in the mid-90s.
That's awesome.
Could you imagine doing the overnights? Irwin did it with me. And I'm sitting there. I'm sitting in Don Imus's chair doing a radio show. Are you kidding me?
That's really cool.
Are you kidding me? I'm sitting there doing a show, and we did it. And here's the reason she had us on. Not because we were so good. She played, as I said, Callaway was her sponsor. She played golf every Friday with Callaway. and she knew nothing about what was going on in baseball. So she called Irwin and I in to do the show with her so she could deflect the baseball calls to us. True story. She's a wonderful girl. She really helped us, and that's how it all got started for me.
That's a really really cool story. That's really cool stuff that you were kind of able to blend that all and use your expertise to get you on there. That's awesome. So,
and how much fun could it be? Could you imagine walking into the WFAN studios? I mean, I'm pinching myself the whole night.
Yeah.
It was just fantastic.
I know I would love it. I think me and David, if we could ever get in a studio and do this as a job in a studio, that would be a dream of ours to be able to absolutely just make, a fair enough living that we could do this only. It would be amazing.
Yep.
It would be a dream come true there. So as you look at fantasy, obviously you've been, rotisserie started as that and fantasy, and you've now been covering it since 1993 closely. You've seen the evolution of fantasy. Now it's done with the rotisserie style. Now it's all head-to-head stuff. I really like the rotisserie's kind of gone by the wayside, and it's all head-to-head stuff. Do you like how fantasy has evolved with a lot of the head-to-head, a lot of money being on the line, a lot of daily fantasy sports coming into play? What do you feel about the current state of fantasy sports?
Well, it's not all head-to-head. Still, the expert leagues, like I was one along with Ron Chandler, who created the Tout Wars League. Okay, we started that, and they have a couple of different formats, but the traditional version is still very popular. And the head-to-head's popular. There's so many different formats. But here's the deal. Everything now is so hinged on the daily fantasy, on the DFS. Everything. I was even told that I even do segments, daily fantasy segments every day, because that's what you have to do. I don't talk a lot about gambling, but I talk about I throw this picture. I tell my listeners to keep a notebook and take notes on my daily podcast. I'll tell you, this guy, Mitch Keller for the Pirates says a 3.26 ERA in 20 starts. Does anybody know that? Use it for fantasy. Nobody knows that.
Yeah. Everyone listening, go ahead, use it.
Certain things like that, okay? But I think one of the problems with fantasy, all fantasy sports, is the leadership of fantasy sports. It's among the biggest growing industries in the last 10 years. And yet you mentioned something before that you wish you could do a show and make a living.
Yep.
You can't, because nobody does. The people on Sirius Radio don't make a living. Okay? The people who are working on various websites, they don't make a living because there's always somebody who's going to do it for free just to get on, right?
That's true. Yeah.
And I have been campaigning to be the commissioner, and the first thing that I would do is say, if your website makes money, everybody has to get paid. Now, if you don't make money, that's different, okay? But if somebody is contributing to you making any kind of money, you must pay them. But the industry, as big as it is, you tell me, think about it for a couple of minutes. Outside of like CBS and ESPN, who's making money? Who's making money?
No,
no one.
You're right.
You know any writers who are making money? You know any broadcasters who are doing podcasts who are making? No is the answer. There may be a couple of them who are this, because let me tell you, there's more than one that deserves to be making money. But no. So I took the position. I had a business for over 40 years, and that was my money thing. I never cared about money when it comes from fan. That's why I never charged a nickel. I've been doing the podcast every day for over 15 years. Wow. Never charged a nickel. Never charged for my website for nothing, because it's not about, once money gets into the picture, but money should be in the picture because this is a big enough industry. For me, it was never my job. But you guys want to go to a radio station and do a fantasy show and expect to make a decent living. Never happened. I don't know anybody. I shouldn't be saying I don't know. There's a lot of things I don't know, but on Sirius Radio, I don't know how many show hosts are making a living without their wife working or without them having another job.
Mm-hmm.
And is that the mark of a good industry?
Not really. No.
I don't think so.
No.
It should have been run very different. One of the reasons my partner Irwin quit was because Irwin and I campaigned to run the industry. And of course, they gave it to their, clique people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's never been run properly. And the industry now, with all the gambling and the DFS and all that stuff, is there's no leadership. No leadership, nothing new exciting. A lot of exciting people, but nobody knows where to put them.
Mm-hmm.
And you're exactly right, because you'll see somebody on TV doing a bit, like, being a writer, doing a thing. And then all of a sudden you see them on a podcast. They're also writing for these things. So They have to do multiple things and a lot of work. And I feel like these individuals that are there are probably putting in 12, 15, 18-hour days, just constantly moving and shaking just to stay relevant enough to continue to make money off these things. So, it's definitely what you're saying is true. And it is a sad state, because there is a lot of very talented writers, some very good personalities that deserve to be only doing those things for a career and having a lucrative career from it. So it is sad. Now, you talked about money.
Yes.
You told me you had a story about baseball cards and money.
Oh, by the way, how much am I getting paid to do the show? I don't think we ever.
You're getting paid. We'll find one day. We'll go together and I'll get you a nice dinner. We'll hang out and I'll get you a nice dinner. I'll come to the city.
Thank you very much.
I feel like that's like priceless. You can get a decent dinner. That's actually pretty good pay.
I'll take it in a second. All right. Doesn't have to be a decent dinner. Okay. Just remember one thing. Be careful. I only go through certain drive-throughs. Not
I'll take that too.
Okay.
So you had a story about baseball cards and money. You didn't tell me on when we talked earlier. So I want to hear that story about baseball cards.
Oh, you got to be kidding me. I hope nobody's listening. Okay.
Put you on the spot here.
Well, I'll tell you what, as I said, growing up in Queens, you had baseball in your blood.
Mm-hmm.
You also had a couple other things in your blood. Okay. We used to go to what we called candy stores at the time. These were, stores that had your school stuff, your notebooks. You had candy, and you had, soda and the stuff.
Yep.
And there were 2 or 3 that my friend and I would go to, and we'd go to the back of the store, and here were little kids, 7, 8 years old. Nobody paid attention to us, and we didn't steal a lot. But we took a couple of packs. It was a nickel a pack. Nobody cared about baseball cards and football cards and hockey cards. I put 5 or 6 packs in my pocket, walk out. Now, if the FBI ever investigated me now, it would be grand larceny, all right? But still, it was a nickel a pack then. And, and my friend Alan and I forget, I'm sorry, I promised I wouldn't mention his name. But we collected cards. Now, we did also buy cards. We'd go into the store, and then we'd all come out with 5 or 6 packs, 25 cents. That was a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
To spend.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, 25 cents. And we'd stand over a garbage pail. This is like a ritual. And we'd open up the packs all together, 4 or 5 of us, right? And we'd chant. We had a mantra. And we didn't even realize we had a mantra.
It's amazing.
And the mantra was, as you open up the cards, got it, need it, need it, got it. That's if you had the card, you had it. If you didn't have the card, you needed it, right?
That's amazing.
And that mantra wasn't rehearsed, wasn't talked about. But there was one time that I sat back and I'm listening to everybody go, got it, need it. Nobody was following each other. And of course, the cards now, I can't even tell you how much, let's put it this way. My baseball cards have done a lot better than the stock market. I'll tell you that right now. But
It's not hard right now, Lenny. It's not very hard to do.
I've got the 57 baseball set, the 57 basketball set. I'm only a couple of cards short of the 54 Topps hockey set that only had the American teams. And then, I just got cards, man. It's just thousands and thousands of cards. I can't even, I tell you, I got the Bill Russell rookie card, the Jimmy Brown rookie card, and the Hank Aaron card with him batting lefty, when he was, that was 1957. I don't even want to tell you.
So when we go to dinner, you're going to bring some of these cards, and they're just going to happen to end up in my car on the way home.
Well, look, these cards, when I was growing up with these cards, I would go in my basement and I'd make teams from the cards that I had. And then I'd put them on the floor. First base over here, second base. I had a big basement, shortstop, and then I put cardboard in the back. If you hit it over the walls, a home run. If you hit what? I would take a little pebble or maybe a little piece of tape, roll it up. Now, you guys haven't met me too much over the years, but you're meeting me now, so you'll understand what I'm saying. My right hand was the pitcher.
Yep.
And it was it was a nice distance away from my left hand. And my left hand was the hitter. My right hand tried to fool my left hand. Now think about that for a second. That's why I am what I am today. All right. My right, if it was a tall pitcher like Gene Connolly, Frank Sullivan, I'd go up and down. If it was Billy Pierce, I'd go back and forward. If it was a sidearm pitcher, Dick Donovan, I'd go sidearm. And I try to emulate the pitchers. And if the batter hit the ball, if it got close to the fielder, I'd slide, I'd throw him out at first. And meantime, all this time going on, I would have a play-by-play guy. I'd have a color man. And if somebody made a great play, I'd interview the player. I had 3 different voices going on. Right? Until one day my mother comes home and says, Lenny, come up here I need to see you right now. And she was pissed. She said to me, how many times have I told you when I go out of the house, I do not want your friends here. All right. But it wasn't my friends. It was 3 voices announcing the game. Right. So it was. And then later on in life, when, of course, I meet this roto lady, Andrea Lamont, and she sees I have these pictures on the wall. And so she decides for the first time, she's going to take my baseball cards and she's going to put them in some kind of order. And I go to her, come home, I see what are you doing? She says, I'm putting them in order. So you know where you could find them all. I said, those 2 cards can't be in the same box. They hate each other, right? and then at night she tells me, you always say good night, Hank, good night, Willie. I said, yeah, these are my friends from when I was 5 years old. I say good night to my cards that are hanging on the wall. So look, as far as the cards go, I had football cards, I had everything, but to me, we never put them in plastic. We never knew the amount they were worth. We played with them. Yep. We had all the fun. We used to put them in our bicycles. You know about that, right?
Make them sound like motorcycles.
Make them sound like, well, we didn't realize every was like minus $5, right? But we did it. We had a great time. Never will sports be loved as much as when it was loved in the 50s.
See, I'm laughing. And David, I don't know if you remember this because David's 8 years younger than me, Lenny, but my sister is 4 years older than me. And I collected cards. I also collected sports pencils and I had sports helmets, football helmets. Yep. And I'm laughing hearing you tell the story because I would take up my whole dang hallway. Yeah. My mom had a long runner and it was one of those runners that had like the outer like box, and the design in the middle. And each end would be a touchdown. And I would either use my pencils and make football teams and I would set them up. 7 guys on the line, 2 wide receivers, quarterback, 2 running backs, and a defense, and they would do play by play, or the helmets would be the same thing. And I would do the same exact thing where I would announce games, and my sister being 4 years older than me and being an evil human being at the time. I love her now, but she was evil then. I would get everything set up intricately. And what would she do? At least you were in the basement. You had your peace and quiet. My sister would come and say, get out of the hallway, and just boot the whole thing. And I would go crying to my mother. But it just makes me laugh that you told that, because I would do a very similar, if not the same thing. And my cards too as well. I'd set up my cards and play football games. And yeah.
Good for you.
We are cut from the same cloth there, Lenny.
Well, 3 years ago, right before COVID, Andrew and I were going to move. We were going to sell our house and just get the hell out of here. So we decided we're going to probably wind up in Arizona. So we packed. We're not taking any furniture. We're taking very little clothes. We got all new clothes, moving, out west. But we had a lot of stuff to pack. And what was that stuff? Everybody in my exactly, but specifically everybody in my family. Lenny, we got to get Lenny something for his birthday. Well, look, let's get him a subscription to Sports Illustrated. Everybody got me Sports Illustrated, Sporting News, whatever they could get. I always got subscriptions to magazines. I will tell you, we loaded about 150 boxes full of and I used to get them in my office, Sports Illustrated, Sporting, whatever. Never looked at them. I just put them in boxes. 3 years ago was the first time I opened the boxes. So these magazines are all in perfect condition. I would say got a couple of thousand.
Wow.
Each one is worth, I would say, $10. Okay, some are worth a lot more.
That's good money.
Are you kidding me? And if we move, we got to get a moving truck just to take my Sports Illustrated, Sporting News magazines. That's it. That's all we got. Magazines. Are you kidding? That's all we got.
That's fantastic. So I'm going to put a circle on my last story with all my stuff. Full circle. My two daughters now play with my sports pencils and my helmets, and they play with them all the time. So that's my full circle there. So that's awesome. I'm really happy you told that story and I got to tell mine, because that's really, really cool. Let's jump on to our last thing here. You are still a baseball fan, obviously. You told us you read every single day, everything that's going on. You probably have forgotten more baseball than me and David know. But I want to know, I'm going to put you on the spot. Who's winning the championship this year?
I know,
and
but
why? I'm making you say and why, because you're all about the and why.
Yeah, of course, and why. Well, I would tell you, but I'm not allowed. Okay, no. I think it's going to be, and I sit here and I'm a Mets fan, but I think it's got to be Atlanta. I mean, this is a team. When you got Max Fried and Kyle Wright, the 20-game winner, or his kid Bryce Elder pitched a great game the other day. They lost Spencer Strider. That was a big one, but he could be coming back. I think that it's going to be Atlanta, but look, they play 5 games with the Mets in the next couple of days. So that's going to be pretty interesting to see. But they have 3 games in Atlanta over the weekend, and they have 2 games in New York. And I wonder what the weather's going to do.
The New York ones might be rough, and Atlanta, it might be at the tail end. They might be okay. I don't know. It might be okay with Atlanta. I don't know. It's going to be weird with the hurricane coming up. You lost me for a second. You there, Lenny? Lenny?
Hello.
You there? You still there, Lenny?
Yeah, I got you.
All right, cool. We're back. All right.
Okay.
So we just got done with the games. We were talking about the games in Atlanta possibly being tough.
Right. I would say Atlanta. I somehow, as a Met fan, you can't pick the Mets to win anything. Right? I mean, come on. Been a Met fan so long, you just know it. They're going to come in second no matter what they do. Even if they win every game, they're going to come in second. That's what the Mets do. The Mets won every game they played, and yet they came in second. Only the Mets could do that. Their history. I'm not big with the Yankees, and of course, everybody in New York wants the Mets and the Yankees to play each other. And who the heck knows? That's always a very exciting game. They used to have the Mayor's Trophy game, where it was very exciting games. But I'll tell you, with the advent of fantasy sports, I wonder how many people really root for the teams anymore.
A lot of people don't. They root for their fantasy teams.
They root for their gambling or their fantasy teams. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's what I don't like about it. And
it took away fandom.
But that's how the world goes, okay? And I think baseball is still great, and I love it. And, of course, being married to Lenny Jr., as I call her, I don't know how I found anybody who knows more baseball than I do. I was in New York. She was in California. She was in a chat room that I was doing a podcast in, and I didn't think she was a female. Forgive me, all you ladies out there. Females don't know this much about baseball. Well, I asked her to call me after the show. She did, and I found out that they know more than me. All right. So that's what we got.
That's fantastic. That's a true love story right there. That is a true love story. Now, I want your analysis before we go. I want your analysis on the Dodgers, because I feel like the Dodgers are the team to beat right now. You didn't mention the Dodgers or even the Astros. Do you think that Atlanta is going to be better than the Dodgers? Because the Dodgers are fantastic this year.
Well, I love 106 wins 3 years in a row.
Yep.
For the Dodgers. I take a look at their team, and you can't say that, look, Gavin Lux hasn't done very much. Freddie Freeman has been phenomenal. Mm-hmm. Phenomenal. Trey Turner, phenomenal. Mm-hmm. Mookie Betts, phenomenal. Here's the fantasy question of the year. Will Cody Bellinger ever be Cody Bellinger again?
Who knows?
But of course, it's the pitching. Kershaw says he's going to pitch next year. We'll see about that. Uh-huh. They're a little light in the pitching staff. Walker Buehler's been hurt. Tony Gonsolin pitched a good couple of innings at Oklahoma City the other day. But I'm just going to stay away from the Dodgers. And the Astros are a team that you got to pay attention to. I don't think anybody realizes unless you're playing. Here's the good part about fantasy sports. Unless you're playing fantasy sports, you may not know how good the Astros pitching staff is. Okay?
That's true.
Because they got some unbelievable pitchers on this team.
Yeah.
What's his name? Framber Valdez. Shutout inning after shutout inning. So I will say I'll go with Atlanta first, and then I'll go with Houston second. I don't think the Dodgers are going to do very well in the playoffs.
All right. So, Lenny, this was lots of fun. Really appreciate you coming on the show.
Oh, absolutely. I'm glad I stayed up, and it's almost 9:30. What, are you kidding me?
Yes, I kept you up. I'm so sorry. David, do you have anything to add? You were silent that whole time.
I'm going to stay up to watch Johnny Carson. Is he still on? Or?
If you look hard enough and long enough, you might find him.
You might find it.
I'm sorry. Good.
I didn't say much because I was enjoying the conversation. Honestly, the stories are incredible. And I think one big theme of this whole podcast is really just a love of the craft. Especially coming from Lenny, just how much he enjoys what he does. Like he said, full show for 15 years, completely free, like website free. Like that is dedication. That is, I just love hearing about it.
And it's probably, I would estimate to say conservatively about 2,000 people who have my phone number.
That's you're very open about giving that. That's great because you're open to everybody.
And I never got burnt. I've gotten many calls. I got a trade offer on the table, Lenny. I need your answer right away. Who should I take? Waiver, all the questions. And I will tell you, nobody could be luckier than me, because to talk baseball all day is the same kid who was in his basement playing with his baseball cards, who believed that the only three things that mattered was your baseball team you rooted for, your baseball cards, and your Little League team. Nothing has changed.
That's amazing to hear. And I love it. I really do love it. So again, Lenny Melnick, not Larry, the legend, Lenny Melnick on the show. Really appreciate you coming on. I want to shout out Lenny Melnick, fantasysports.com, his daily podcast, Lady and the Legend, and, with his wonderful wife, Andrea Lamont. And again, thank you so much for coming on. Thanks for staying up. I really appreciate everything that the whole conversation we had today.
I'll tell you, we get 40 to 50 people who come to the chat room every single day. And sometimes they don't even listen to anything I say. They talk to my, but I'll cut it short. After all these years, and I'm not saying everybody comes every day, but we've all become friends.
Yeah.
It started off with somebody saying, Lenny, I won't be here next week. I'm going to Atlanta. And somebody in the chat room says, I live in Atlanta. Come visit me. And awesome. They did. And that's the kind of chat room we have. I don't believe very many of them listen to anything I say. They talk among themselves, but it's the greatest thing that ever happened. And I thank you guys for having me on.
No,
absolutely.
On.
Everyone, I really appreciate you guys all listening. I hope you guys enjoyed the conversation as much as we did. If you like what you hear, like, share, follow, subscribe, rate 5 stars on Spotify and iTunes. Definitely spread this word of mouth. Go find us on the socials. Till next week, everyone. So long.